I'm sure most of you remember the Master System, but how many of you remember the Master System 2? I certainly do, and I had one as a kid. But the Master System 2 had a much more flavourful past. In South Korea, I believe it was called the Aladdin Boy, and the first version was even called the Game Boy with a star where the E was. There's some rare versions of these like Tech Toy, and there's some funny ones in Brazil. So it's certainly got more of a character and more versions about than the first one. A customer sent this in. It's a heavily modified Master System 2. He's running some flashcards to play all the backups. It's got an FM mod and a lot more. There's obviously some issues, that's why it's with us, so let's just take a look. This is the customer's Master System 2, so it looks fairly stock from the outside and the front at least. But if we turn this around, you can see we've got all sorts going on the back. We've got a custom AV port, the switch here, and if we gently remove the lid, we reveal a rat's nest of wires and mods. There's an LED stuck to the lid, so we don't want to tug that wire. We have what looks like a custom AV port, which is just composite by the looks, audio, mono and composite. We got the switch here, which goes down to a Tim Worthington FM mod. And the unit does work for the most part, but let's just take a look at the problems. We have notes of what was sent in, so we don't forget to send anything back, and we have a list of what's done. So it is a composite mod, which will be this connector here. We have an SMS++, which that's probably similar to the Mega Drive++, like region free and game resets and stuff. And that's probably going to be just wrapped up in here with a MPU, I guess. We've got the FM expansion, that's definitely the Tim Worthington mod there. So we know what we're dealing with. Issues, video blacking out when using the old EverDrive. And we've got two EverDrives here, the X7 and the Master EverDrive. I'm going to guess this is the old one. And after that, we have an FM expansion can't be turned off. This needs to be fixed so it can be turned off. Whereas right now, it's basically FM mod on and Japanese region. And he wants it to just off and on. So I don't know much about this mod. We'll have to do some reading up on that and figure it out. But we'll start with the video blanking. So I've been playing Sonic for a while. You'll notice the audio, that's the FM version of Sonic. And I haven't had many visual glitches. You get the very odd one where it slightly flickers. So let's just see if we can catch it happening while I'm playing with one hand again. And you can see there's a slight bit of interference. It doesn't seem to be related to moving, that's why I've kind of stopped Sonic. It's not like when you're moving things happen. So let's just do something more obvious first. I'm wondering whether it's just pure coincidence and we simply have a dodgy port here. So let's just move the wires. So the soldering's fine. Let's crunch this cable up. So it's not the actual cable. So let's just slightly move this end. And we can see there, straight away blackout. So I barely have to touch this end here, just the slightest movement. And we get interference and full blackout. My guess then is going to be it's simply a case of this connector is no good. I mean, it feels loose as well. This is a custom connector. We could replace it. We could replace this port as well. But let's start with a hot vinegar bath and IPA clean. And now with that clean and wiggling, that seems to have stopped all of the issues. So hopefully that's part of the problem. One thing I have noticed is this regulator is just floating in midair and ridiculously hot. Whoever did the mods didn't bother installing the screws back down on these clamps, which then form a heatsink on the circuit board itself. So that's a big fail there. And we can see the regulator's running at 110 degrees. So that's pretty insane. That is not good enough to be running. The customer did mention that the heavier power draw EverDrive causes the screen to flicker as well. So on top of a slightly dirty port, we're more than likely dealing with, and I think there was a flicker then at the bottom, the fact that this thing is running at over 100 degrees. And that's the heat problem sorted. It's now 30 degrees. And that's because the customer's paid for a USB-C clean power, so now the console's powered via a USB-C cable. And I've played Sonic for quite a while now, and there's no visual flickering whatsoever. So I think a combination of a bad port and this running at over 100 degrees was the cause of that issue. Let's now move on to the FM sound. So you'll notice how different Sonic sounds. That's because we're running an FM version of Sonic. And then what we need to do is disable the FM sound so you can hear the difference. And with the FM sound disabled, by just literally removing the cable to the FM mod for now, you can hear this is what you're most used to. This is the standard software generated audio, not the FM generated. So there's a mode at the minute that's FM mode on and FM mode on in Japanese mode. And that's via this switch here that goes between FM and FM Japanese, but there's no off. That will be because this wire that goes into the Tim Worthington mod here is just a 2-pole switch. So you've basically got permanently connected either the middle and left and the middle and right. But there's a third stage on this mod where it's physically not connected at all, hence removing that showed the ability to disable the FM. So this will need a 3-pole switch, not a 2. A good way to test if you're in Japanese mode is to start Wonder Boy in Monsterland. And if we just start that game, we can see we get Wonder Boy in Monsterland, and that's with the switch in the off position. If we flick it to on and restart, you can see we get Sega Mark III pop up and Super Wonder Boy. So this is in Japanese mode now. The Super Wonder Boy has both ROMs built in, Japanese and English. So that's the 2 modes we have, and you can hear the FM audio. This has all been hot glued in, so first thing we need to do is remove this because we'll have to swap it. That's finally out now. There was tons of glue on that. And I've figured out why they've glued it in, because if we measure the drill hole, it's like 15.7, and the outer diameter of this is like 0.5 mil different, when the hole size should have been around probably 14 mil. So they probably just didn't have a 14 mil drill bit and drilled it to 16. With the hole now widened, it's the only way to cover up the mess and fit a new switch in correctly. We now have the proper 3-position switch, all wired back in and closed up. You've got the USB-C port now, and you've got the switch here that doesn't look too bad compared to what it was. With the switch in the off position first, let's load up Sonic FM, and this should hopefully load up with normal audio. And there we go, so you can hear that is just normal Sonic. Let's flick the switch one way, reset. There's FM. So that appears to now all be working. I'll see if the customer wants the inside tidied. The rat's nest inside of wires will take several hours to clean up, so he may not want that done, but that's all the problems fixed.